Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanna, and I'm part of the Fast Cloud team. Welcome to this webinar that will cover multi-factor authentication, also known as MFA. Beginning February 1st, this is going to be a requirement when using Salesforce. My coworker Albin will guide us through this webinar. If you have any questions, please use the chat feature. And at the end of this webinar, we will have a session for a Q&A. At this time, I'm going to turn the program over Albin. Albin?
Thank you, Joanna, and welcome to everyone joining the webinar. Thank you for being here. My name is Olvin Avarca. I am a Salesforce developer and consultant at Fast Cloud Consulting. And today I'll be presenting to you all you need to know about Salesforce MFA requirements. Sit tight, buckle up, and we're about to take off. So we read in the news almost every day about security issues and how attackers compromise accounts in small and big companies. So security measures are more important than ever. The global threat landscape is constantly evolving and attacks are on the rise. Remote work environments are at the new front for attacks. Username and passwords are no longer sufficient protection on their own. And MFA is not a new security feature. It's been around for a while. But this year, starting February 1st, Salesforce will implement across the board their MFA requirements. So phishing, we have some data from 2019 that phishing was the top threat, and it continues to be throughout the years to be the top threat. It was involved in 32% of confirmed breaches and 78% of cyber espionage incidents. 28% of breaches involve malware infections, and 29% involve the use of stolen credentials. Both are frequently accomplished through phishing attacks. 30% of phishing messages are opened by target users, but you might be wondering, if you're not a technical expert, what phishing is. So phishing is a cybercrime in which a target or targets are contacted by email, telephone, or text messages by someone posing as a legitimate institution to lure individuals into providing sensitive data such as personally identifiable information, banking and credit card details, and passwords. So then once they get that information, they use it to access important accounts and can result in identity theft and financial loss. So they can, bad actors, they can sell your credentials or your customer data on the black market, also known as the dark web. They can take over the identity of a real user. They can spam from legitimate accounts, use to store financial instruments, make high-value purchases, add card skimming code on a site. And what is the impact on your business? Well, first of all, you lost your customer trust. You lost revenue. You damaged your brand. You violate regulations, and you might as well be fined. So taking all of this into consideration, we have MFA for securing user accounts. And MFA is composed of login credentials, the normal username and password combination, plus something else, something that you have, and that you can use as another factor of authentication. Might come from an Authenticator app or security key. Also, enabling MFA is relatively simple, and we're going to look into that in more detail later on. So MFA is a strong authentication method that requires users to supply 2 or more pieces of evidence or factors to prove their identity before they can log in. The first factor is something user knows, your username and password, and additional factors are verification methods that the user has in his possession. So by typing logins to multiple types of factors, even if a hacker steals your user's username or password, odds are very low that they can also guess or impersonate something like a secure authenticator app on a mobile device or a physical security key. So Salesforce products support several types of authentication methods for MFA, and more on that on the slides to come. So this is the flow that normally an attacker would follow. Right? They send you an email on behalf of an institution. They try to impersonate that institution, and then you click on that link. You get to a phishing website that looks very similar to the original site, and from there you input your credentials, and then you get your username and password stolen. But because you will have MFA enabled, even if they stole your username and password, they won't get access to your Salesforce because they need a second factor authentication. So here's some typical forms of attacks: phishing, vishing, smishing, spear phishing, keyloggers, credential stuffing, brute force attacks, and man-in-the-middle attacks. So starting this February 1st, Salesforce will begin requiring all customers to use MFA in most of their clouds in order to access Salesforce products through the user interface. And this is a very important piece of information, that those that access Salesforce through the user interface are the ones that have to comply with the MFA requirements. We have a few options to satisfy the MFA requirements. You can either turn on MFA directly in your Salesforce products, and we're going to show you how to do that as a system admin who has privileges. Or you can use your identity provider's SSO MFA to comply with their requirement as well. So in other words, if you were using Azure AD to authenticate to Salesforce, then Salesforce expects that Azure has MFA implemented. Okay, so options for securely accessing Salesforce. And we have here a few options that Salesforce systems implement. Device activation is one of them, and this is sometimes confused with MFA. This functionality is sometimes confused with MFA because it appears to the user when they try to log in. So device activation requires users to provide an additional authenticator factor if they log in from an unrecognized browser. So that's the trigger. If the Salesforce product does not recognize your browser, then they will trigger this device activation mechanism. It can also happen if you attempt to log in from a new IP address outside a trusted IP range. And for device activation, supported verification methods for this feature include email, SMS text messages, for example, as well as strong methods like the Salesforce Authenticator or third-party time-based passwords and security keys. With MFA, you are required to provide the second factor authentication every time you log in, and it requires a strong verification method to verify your identity. So, so whereas device activation, you can use email or SMS text messages. For MFA, on the other hand, um, requires users to supply a strong verification method every time they log in. Email and SMS text messages are not allowed for MFA logins because of their inherent susceptibility to attack by bad actors. So these options are not available. Um, if your organization has single sign-on enabled, um, Salesforce specs that your identity provider has MFA enabled for you. Um, from the Salesforce perspective, there's no way to validate whether you have MFA or not at your identity provider, but you're contractually required to have it on. So whether you are logging in from any Salesforce cloud you see here, Marketing Cloud, some of the platforms like Heroku, um, you can enable MFA on those as well. I was mentioning that you need to have a strong verification method for MFA, and we're going to look into more detail um, now. So the one that I would recommend that you use is, of course, the Salesforce Authenticator app because of its ease of use. However, there are many other options on the table. They have their pros and their cons, but it all depends on how your organization, what's best for your organization, really. So with the Salesforce Authenticator app, it's fast. You can actually configure it so that you don't even have to tap on the screen. The Authenticator app will recognize your home IP and will let you in without even, opening the Authenticator app, as opposed to two other verification methods shown here. You can also use third-party authenticator apps such as Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Authy. These applications are available in iOS and the App Store free of charge. You can also use security keys such as Yubico's YubiKey or Google's Titan security key. And these might be very convenient in case you don't have an internet connection. All you have to do is just grab your security key and connect it through your USB port, and then just press the button, and that'll get you authenticated. But we're going to look into more detail for each one of these later on. Then you also can use built-in authenticators. And here you have some examples of this. Windows Hello, Touch ID, Face ID, they would also work for MFA. As I mentioned before, methods not supported are SMS, phone call, and email verification, because they may be easy to impersonate or intercept, by using SIM hijacking or phishing. So we're going to look into detail now this Salesforce Authenticator app, which we recommend you use. By far, out of all of the methods I have used, I think this is by far the easiest one to deal with. So it's a mobile app you can find, for iOS and Android devices, and you can use it to authenticate. So right after you try to log into Salesforce, once you have the application installed, it will send a push notification to your phone, and it'll give you some details about the login request. So you'll see here the username, the service, the device, and the location that someone is trying to log in from. So with that information, you can either deny or approve the request. So this is as simple as it gets. Just with the tap of a, you can get it approved or denied. Then you also have third-party authenticator apps that also work with Salesforce MFA. So Salesforce supports only authenticator apps that generate temporary code base on the OAuth time-based one-time password algorithms. Some of the apps that comply with this are listed here below. The Microsoft Authenticator, Authy, and Google Authenticator, they all work. So the way these applications work, they're a little different from the way that the Salesforce Authenticator app works, because while the Salesforce application requires internet connection, these third-party authenticators don't. They're using an algorithm based on a security key and time to provide you a code that you have to type into Salesforce before logging into the system. So might be convenient in case you don't have an internet connection in your phone. And then you can also use security keys, and these are easy to use hardware solutions which provide an alternative to mobile app verification methods. They work out of the box. You don't have to install anything. And they make use of strong public key cryptography that's unique to the user's account. It is resistant to malware and man-in-the-middle attack. So you would have to connect your security key to the computer and then just press the button that comes, on the device for Salesforce to recognize you. Here's some technical specification. Um, as, as for supported browsers and all Salesforce products except Tableau Online support this method of authentication. And you can also use built-in authenticators, and these are easy MFA verifications using a desktop or mobile device built-in authenticator service such as Windows Hello, Touch ID, or Face ID. So they work well. They're very trustworthy. You can verify your identity with a fingerprint. Probably you're used to unlocking your phone with your fingerprint, and it works the same way for MFA. Also, if you have Face ID, facial recognition scan would also comply with the MFA requirement. No apps needed. Normally, these built-in authenticators come pre-installed in your phone. So, so it's depending on the user's device. Not all devices come with this built-in authenticators. It also depending on the operating system and the browser you're using. If you're using a browser that is not supported, then it will not work. Supported browsers, let me go back here. So supported browsers are Chrome, Edge, Firefox, and Safari. Okay, so when you enable MFA, the login process changes. You have to obtain a verification method and then register the method to connect it to Salesforce account, and then use that verification method at each login to verify identity. So we recommend that before you implement MFA to your internal users, you roll out some sort of plan um, so they know that MFA is coming and what options they have to comply with these verification methods. So you can evaluate business and user requirements. And this is part of the plan to get your users ready. Inventory users, roles, and permissions, plan a rollout, change management, and support strategies. And then you do the rollout, you kick off change management activities, you distribute verification methods to users, you enable the MFA, and then help users register and log in with a verification method. And then after you implement the MFA, you can manage, you can collect feedback and monitor adoption metrics. And this is there's a functionality in Salesforce that you can collect feedback. The system monitors who connects through MFA and who doesn't, so you can keep track of those metrics. And I'm going to show you now how you can implement the MFA in your organization. So if you're a system administrator or a power user, this is something you have to know. You may implement MFA using permission sets, or you may implement it at the profile level. So all users under that profile have the MFA enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play this back.
Enabling MFA is fast and easy. First, create a permission set that requires users to provide a second factor of authentication when they log in. In Setup, enter permission in the Quick Find box and select Permission Sets. Create a new permission set for MFA, then click Save. Now use the Find Settings box to locate the Multi-Factor Authentication for User Interface Logins permission. Then click Edit at the top of the screen. Scroll back down to the MFA permission and select it, and scroll back up to the top to save your change. The next step is to assign the permission set to your users. Click Manage Assignments, then Add Assignments. Check the box next to the users who should log in with MFA, and click Assign, then Done. In this example, we're rolling out MFA in phases, starting with Karen Adams. Karen is one of your Salesforce champions, and she's going to try out MFA and give you feedback on the experience. Now let's see how the login process changes when MFA is enabled. The first time Karen logs in after MFA is enabled, she's prompted to register a verification method. She'll use this method as her second authentication factor each time she logs in going forward. Salesforce allows several types of verification methods for MFA, including the Salesforce Authenticator app, third-party time-based one-time password apps like Google Authenticator, and U2F compatible security keys, such as Yubico's YubiKey. Salesforce Authenticator is a free mobile app for iOS and Android devices. Karen is going to use this app as her verification method. She starts by installing Salesforce Authenticator from the App Store or Google Play. After she installs Salesforce Authenticator, she launches the app and takes a quick tour. Now Karen is ready to connect Salesforce Authenticator to her Salesforce account. On her mobile device, she taps Add an Account. Salesforce Authenticator generates a unique two-word phrase. Back in Salesforce, Karen enters the phrase and clicks Connect. Then she's prompted to confirm the connection in Salesforce Authenticator. She reviews the details to make sure the connection request is legitimate. Yes, it's her connecting to Salesforce. So she taps Connect. And that's it. Karen has successfully connected Salesforce Authenticator to her Salesforce account, and she finishes logging in. Now let's see how Karen uses the app as a second factor when she logs into Salesforce. She enters her username and password, as usual. Then Salesforce Authenticator sends a push notification to her mobile device. Karen opens the app to see all the details of the login request. She verifies that the request is coming from her, then taps Approve to finish logging in. The way users register and log in with third-party authenticator apps and security keys is a little different from what we just saw for Salesforce Authenticator. But no worries, because users are guided through each process with in-app, step-by-step prompts. To learn more about MFA, check out these resources.
Well, there you go. So you have an idea of how to implement MFA using permission sets. But as I mentioned, you can also do it from the profile so that all users get MFA enabled at once. You can, if you want to read more about MFA, there are plenty of resources online, especially official resources from the Salesforce help pages for administrators. Then you have Trailhead modules you can complete. I recommend you do that. And there are also Trailblazer community groups you can join. So if you join Trailhead, then you can join a group to get you, posted on the latest about MFA. And well, now we have a section here for Q&A. Let me take your time there. If you need to type something out or if you need to speak your question, please do so. Okay, so we have a question coming in. It reads, "Is MFA required for RPA or automated testing accounts?" And the short answer is no. MFA is not required for automatic accounts. So if you have an API or an integration user in your organization, those don't need to have MFA enabled. Only those users who log in through a user interface are required to have MFA enabled. Okay, we have another question coming in. It reads, "How will the MFA requirement affect users on February 1st, 2022? That's a good question. Well, first of all, the login process will change. Even if your system administrator does not enable MFA on time for you to try it, the system will enable it for your users. So the login process will change. So besides your username and password, you also have to provide another method of authentication. So it's going to be a little shocky if they don't, if they're not aware of this change. So that's why we recommend you roll out a plan to let users know about this. There's another question. It reads, "Do we have to use the same MFA solution for all of our Salesforce users?" And the question is no. You can have MFA implemented at your identity provider. So if you're using SSO in your organization, you can use whatever their MFA methods are available there. Whereas if you have a few users, like system administrators, you can have them use the Salesforce Authenticator app, because Salesforce recommends that your system administrators use the standard login form. And this is because your identity provider might have issues, and then people will not be able to log in. So by allowing the system administrator to log in with username and password and the Salesforce built-in MFA, then they'll be able to get into your instance. There's another question. It reads, "If I have not enabled the MFA, will be disconnected?" The answer is no. Salesforce will ask you for a second factor authentication. Even if your system administrator has not enabled MFA in your organization, Salesforce will enable it for you. So that is why they are requiring this. So they're requiring that MFA is implemented before February 1st. But in case you don't do it, then Salesforce will implement it for you and require your users to use either the Salesforce Authenticator app or any other of the methods that we looked at previously. However, you are contractually required to comply with the MFA implementation by February 1st. Okay, there's another question. The MFA is something that will be better one time for everybody in the org. I understand that correct? No, you can have people using the Salesforce Authenticator app and some other users using the Microsoft Authenticator app, and even some other users using the security key. So it's not that there's only one method of authentication for all of your users. They vary, and it's what the user wants to use. So if they feel more comfortable with the Authenticator app from Salesforce, while others use the security key, so they can mix one or two methods of authentication in your org. So it's not just one. You can have two or many. Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, I think this would be it. This is what we had to show you. I appreciate your participation in this webinar. I hope you like it. I hope you have learned something that you can share with your users, and good luck with MFA. Thank you very much.